Hello viewers, I am Harike Chaudhary. Welcome to my tutorial class of economics. Today we'll be discussing about decomposition of price effect into income effect. We have already prepared two videos, okay, on the substitution effect, price effect and income effect. So please visit those videos then before watching this video. Okay, so we are going to discuss the decomposition of price effect for three commodities, that is normal goods, inferior goods and given goods. Okay, let us start the normal goods. So I'll draw the two-dimensional graph, okay, where we are measuring y good on y-axis, x good on x-axis. And we know that given the money, income and prices of the product, okay, so you can have one budget line. Let's see, this is the BL is the budget line, original budget line, okay, and the consumer is in equilibrium. Already we have discussed this thing at point E, where there is a tendency between budget line and indifference curve IC1, okay, where the consumer is purchasing OY1 of Y good and OX1 of X good. Now let us assume that the price of X has reduced, okay, then in that case our budget line will shift from BL to a new budget line. We will get, okay, say this is our new budget line. Due to falling the price of X, the budget line has shifted from BL to BL1. Okay. Now, since with the fall in the price of X commodity, the purchasing power of the consumer will increase. Okay. So now, in order to nullify the effect of increase in real income of the consumer, let us assume that some amount has been taken away from the consumer in such a way so that he will be in the same level of satisfaction. The purpose of taking away the money from the consumer is to nullify the impact of increasing the real income. That means we want to keep the real income of the consumer as constant. Okay, so in that case we have to draw a new budget line in such a way so that it will touch, it will be a tangent with the indifference curve IC, indifference curve, okay, IC1, and we are giving the name as B star, L star as a new budget line. Okay, so here basically what we are going to do, we are going to find out the substitution effect, and this is basically the Hickesian substitution effect. Another substitution effect you will get, that is called Slutsky substitution effect. Okay, but for the time being we will discuss only Hickesian substitution effect. And now, okay, here we are saying that we are taking away some amount of money from the consumer. So in terms of X commodity, we are taking away L star, L1 amount of money. In terms of Y commodity, B star. Okay, this is the amount of, in terms of Y commodities, we are taking away money equivalent to B star. And this B star, L star is a parallel to BL1. Okay, you have to draw a parallel budget line, okay, with BL1. So here almost you can say parallel, okay, but during your exam you have to draw the parallel one. Okay, so anyway, so now what happens, the consumer, after nullifying the, or after maintaining the real income of the consumer as constant, what will happen, the new budget line will shift from BL1 to B star, L star, and the consumer will be at equilibrium at this point. You give a name of this point as E1. Okay, so at this point what will happen, the consumer will purchase OX2 of X commodity and OY2 of Y commodity. Okay, when, remember, there is an increase of consumption of X commodity of consumer and reduction of consumption of Y commodity, okay, because there is a change of the relative prices, where the real income is remain constant. Got it? That's why we are bringing this one BL1 to the left side of the BL1. Okay, the B star, L star, why you are drawing? We are drawing, okay, we are reducing the real income, and this real income has increased because of change the price of X. So we want to nullify. So ultimately what happens after that, what we observe, the consumer will move from point E to E1. Why this? Where the consumer is purchasing more of X or consuming more of X and less of Y. Why? The reason is that since the price of X is reduced, the X has become cheaper in comparison to Y good. That's why the consumer is replacing Y with respect to X. So the consumer is consuming more of cheaper good than the costlier good, Y. Okay, so that's why this much increase in X2 amount, this has increased because of substitution effect. So this is known as the movement from point E to E1 is known as substitution effect. Got it? Why substitution effect? Because consumer is substituting the cheaper good, that is X, with the costlier good, Y. Okay, that's why there is a changes in the or increase in the consumption of X good. Okay, now this is about the what? Substitution effect. Now again, let us say that whatever money income taken away from the consumer, if we repay them back, okay, then what will happen? So if we want to repay them the consumer, their money already taken away from them, so this B star L star budget line will shift to BL1, isn't it? Yes. Okay, we are taking the money initially. Why we are taking the money? Taking the money from the consumer? Because we want to nullify the impact of increase in real income. Now we want to give back the debt amount to the consumer. As a result, the budget line B star L star will shift to BL1, and the consumer will be at a new equilibrium point on a higher indifference curve IC2, and this is the this is the equilibrium point. Give a name of this point as E2. Okay. Now see how much the consumer is consuming X good and Y good. So if we draw this coordinate, what we will get? Okay, the consumer is consuming O3 of Y good and OX3 of X good. That means initially what happened, due to falling prices, the consumer moved from point E to E1. Okay, so where the consumer is consuming more, this much X1, X2 amount of X good more. Now, since and while analyzing this one, so we assume that the real income of the consumer is constant. Okay, so here this is known as substitution effect. Now, if we allow the consumer's income to increase, real income to increase, so budget line will shift from B star to L star, or B star L star to BL1. Okay, the consumer will move to point E2 from E1. So movement from point E to E1 is nothing but it is income effect. And as a result, the consumer is purchasing X2, X3 amount of X commodity more. Okay, why? Because his real income or income has increased. Got it? Represented by the budget line, shifting of budget line from B star L star to BL1. Okay, so here you have to understand. Okay, initially the consumer was at point E. Okay, when the budget line is BL. Got it? But due to falling prices, the budget line shifted to BL1, and consumer finally reached point E2. So before reaching point E2, actually what happens, the consumer reached from E to E1, which is known as substitution effect, and from E1 to E2, which is known as income effect. That means what? Here the price effect, what we are trying to do, we are trying to decompose the price effect into income effect and substitution effect. Okay, so here what is the price effect? Price effect, you see, original consumer was purchasing OX1. Now due to falling prices, he moves from equilibrium point E to E2. Okay, so the price effect, total price effect is X3. Okay, now due to this much income, consumption of goods of X has increased because of change in price. Okay, but there are two parts of this change in consumption of X. Okay, one is attributed by changing the through substitution effect. Substitution effect is how much? Here x1, x2 is the substitution effect in the graph, and x2, x3 is the income effect. So in this way, just we have bifurcated the price effect into substitution effect and income effect. So in this case, since we are talking about normal good, because normal goods are those goods where with the increase in income, okay, the consumption of that good will also increase. So here, when the income level increases, represented by the shifting of budget line from B star to BL1, okay, so consumer moves from here to that point this. Okay, if you join these 2 points, you will get what is called ICC, income consumption curve. So this is the mechanism how to decompose price effect into income effect and substitution effect in case of normal good. Now we will again discuss about the inferior good. What is inferior good? Inferior goods are those goods where the income effect is negative. That means what? When our income increases, what happens? Our consumption of that good declines. That is, those goods are known as inferior good. Okay, normal goods, normally with the increase in income, your consumption will also increase. Inferior goods, with the increase in your income level, the consumption of those goods will go down. Okay, that means, okay, here income effect will become negative. Then again we can show this thing, same thing. We get what? Two-dimensional graph. So y good on y-axis, x goods on x-axis. This is the original budget line. Okay, BM, given the money income and prices of the two products. Again, the consumer is at equilibrium. So we are assuming on IC1, this is the equilibrium point. It is purchasing or consuming OY1 of X good and OX1 of X good. Okay, equilibrium. You say this is EU1. Now assume the price of X has reduced, so our budget line will shift to BL1. Okay, so in order to nullify the impact of increase in real income, we have to take away some amount of money from the consumer. So we have to draw another budget line. So that the consumer's real income will remain constant. Okay, so again we are giving this is the B star, L star, and now you understand why we are bringing that the budget line from BL1 to B star, L star, because at this point we don't want to increase the real income of the consumer. We want the consumer's real income should remain constant. That's why whatever real income has increased due to fall in the price of commodity, we are taking away some amount of money so that their real income will remain constant. Okay, so now this new budget line will tangent the inverse curve at point E2. Okay, so this is E2 where the consumer is consuming O2Y amount of Y good and OX2 amount of X good. Now since we are talking about inferior good, okay, so whatever money that has been taken away from the consumer, if we repay them again, okay, then his income or her income will be more. That means what? The budget line B star, L star will shift to the BL1. Got it? So now since we are considering inferior goods, right now the consumer is consuming how much? Consumer is consuming OX2 amount of goods. Okay. Got it? This is nothing but this is the substitution effect. Got it? Because originally the consumer is in equilibrium at point E1, but since the price of X has reduced, okay, we are allowing only the relative changes in the relative prices of X and Y. Okay, so the consumer is consuming more of X, that is X1, X2 amount. Okay, so this will represent, and the equilibrium point will move from point E1 to E2. So that movement is known as substitution effect. Okay, so substitution effect is here. How much? See, price effect is nothing but income effect plus substitution effect. So here the substitution effect is how much? Okay, X1, X2. That one is the substitution effect. Now, since we are talking about inferior good means what? As I have said that with the increase in income level, the consumption of the goods will go down. Okay. So now the consumer is consuming OX2 amount of goods of X Okay. Now if we return the money, whatever taken away from the consumer, okay, if we pay back them, okay, then budget line will shift from B star to L star, and the consumer will be at equilibrium somewhere here. Okay. We have to draw the difference curve on a higher difference curve, okay, and the equilibrium point will become represented by 0.3, okay, on a higher difference curve. Got it? Now you see, so when money has been returned to the consumer, so consumer is shifting from point E2 to E3. Okay, this movement from E2 to E3 is known as income effect. Okay, but at this point, how much consumer is purchasing of X good? Okay, so if you draw a perpendicular on the x-axis, so you will say X3. Okay, and in this way, okay, you can say Y3. Okay, our target is to X commodity. Now see, due to substitution effect, finally consumer was consuming OX2. Okay, substitution effect is always positive. When the price of the commodity falls, the consumer will find that commodity will be cheaper. So obviously they are going to purchase more. Okay, so X1, they increase the consumption of X commodity from OX1 to OX2. Now, since the X commodity is inferior good, so when the income of the consumer increases, so it is going to reduce the consumption. How much? Reduction in the consumption, you say this much. Negative income. Due to exactly there is no increase in the income, the consumer is going to consume OX2 amount. But if the money taken away from the consumer is again returned to the consumer, so his or her income will increase. So ultimately what happens? So his consumption or her consumption of X will become, okay, reduced to OX3. That is, here income effect is negative by how much? X1, X3. Okay, got it? So now, exactly what is the amount of price effect then? Price effect is nothing but initially on the original budget line, E1 is the equilibrium point. Consumer was purchasing OX1 of X good and OY1 of Y good. When the price of X is reduced, so consumer will move from E1 to E3. Okay, so it is price effect. The total effect is what? X1, X3. But directly consumer won't shift from E1 to E3. First, it will shift its equilibrium from E1 to E2. Okay, where it is going to increase the consumption of X commodity by X1, X2 amount. Okay, this is substitution effect. And since we are talking about inferior goods, there will be negative impact of increasing income. So X3, X2 amount, X3, okay, X3, X2 amount. This is wrong. Okay, negative price effect is X3, X2 amount. Okay, so consumption of X good has been reduced to OX3. That is, X3, X2 amount has been reduced due to increase in income. Why? Because we are considering X good is an inferior good. Okay, so ultimate impact of price effect is what? The movement will be from E1 to E3. Which one is the summation of substitution effect? That is X1, X2, okay, and minus X3, X2. So ultimately what we will get? This is nothing but X1, X3. So here the income effect is negative by X3, X2 amount, and which is lesser than the positive substitution effect. So here X1, that is the positive substitution effect, is greater than the X3, X2 negative. Here substitution effect is greater than the income effect. That's why due to falling prices, we are observing there is an increase in consumption of, okay, X good. But remember, here the income effect is negative because this is an inferior good. So now another type of good is there, that is called given good, where the income effect, negative income effect, will be greater than the positive substitution effect. Okay, that means finally the demand consumption of X good will go down. Okay, we'll draw that one. So I think it is clear. This is a case of inferior good. We are bifurcating price effect into income effect and substitution effect. This is decomposition of price effect into substitution effect and income effect when the commodity X is what? It is inferior good. Okay, Y being the normal good. Okay. Now we'll talk about inferior good. Inferior good means what? Exactly when the negative income effect will be more. Here then the substitution effect. Okay, we consider here what is the substitution effect? That means x1, x2 is the substitution effect, isn't it? So in case of inferior commodity, the here negative income effect is what? Income effect is how much? X3, X2. Okay, but in case of inferior giffen good, giffen, G-I-F-F-E-N, giffen. Okay, this is one special kind of inferior good. Okay, where this negative income effect will be more than the positive substitution effect. That means the consumer's equilibrium will be somewhere here in this range. Okay. Yes. So now let us discuss about what? Let us discuss about different goods. Okay, again we are drawing two-dimensional graph. Y good on y-axis, X good on x-axis. Okay, so our original budget line is what? BL due to fall in price and the consumer is in equilibrium. On difference curve IC1, okay, this is the equilibrium, or you can consider this is the equilibrium point. Consumer is purchasing OY1 of Y good, OX1 of X good. Okay, now let us assume again that the price of X has reduced, so the budget line will shift to BL1. Got it? So since price of X has reduced, so real income has increased, so we want to reduce the income of the consumer so that his real income will remain constant. So that means we are going to take away some amount of money from the consumer. That means what we are going to draw? We are going to draw another budget line, okay, which will be a tangent with the indifference curve IC1, and we are giving the name this budget line as B star L star. Okay. Okay, now consumer will be what? Purchasing, or the consumer will be in equilibrium at point E2. Okay, and the consumer is consuming OX2 of X good and OY2 of Y good. Okay, this X1, X2 is nothing. This is known as positive substitution effect. Positive substitution effect, we are maintaining here real income is constant. Only due to change in relative prices, consumer is consuming more of X because price of X has reduced, so it is cheap. It has become cheaper. Okay. Now, whatever money that has been taken away from the consumer, if we return to them, so that B star L star budget line will shift to B and 1. Okay. Now here we are considering the good is X good is a giffen good. Okay, which is also one kind of inferior good. But here, what we have to understand that the income effect which is negative. Okay, since it is inferior, means with the increasing income, the demand for or the consumption of that good will go down. Okay, clear? So what will happen? So, but the negative income effect will be more than the positive substitution effect. Here the substitution effect is how much? X1, X2. Now we have to show the negative income effect more than this X1, X2. That means what? So once we return the money taken away from the taken away from the consumer to the consumer again, okay, so his equilibrium will shift from point E2 to somewhere here. Okay, just let me draw the difference curve IC2. Okay, and the consumer is in equilibrium at point E3, where he is consuming OX3 of X good and OY3 of Y good at this point. Okay, that means exactly due to substitution effect, consumption of X has increased from OX1 to OX2. So this much consumption has increased. Okay, this is substitution effect. But once the income is increased from represented by the shifting of budget line from B star L star to B L1. So now see the consumer is moving from point E2 to E3. So if you join these 2 points with a card, you will get what? ICC, which is backward. Okay, isn't it? So here see what is the amount of what? What is the amount of negative income effect? Here negative income effect is how much? So we are writing price effect, income effect plus substitution effect. So here the substitution effect is how much? X1, X2 substitution effect. Negative income effect is how much? X2, X3. Okay, that means or we can write X3, X2. Okay, this is minus negative. Okay, this consumption of X is reducing from OX2 to OX3. So this much X3, X2 amount is the negative income effect. So finally, what we will observe? Exactly, initially the consumer was purchasing OX1 of X good. You see at this original equilibrium point E1. Okay. Now due to fall in price of X commodity, now the consumer is purchasing only OX3. That means price effect is how much here? Here price effect is how much? X3, X1. This X3, X1, how to get that one? So this is the value. X1, here X2. Okay, this is negative. Okay, do not forget this is one negative sign is here. Got it? So finally, what we observe that due to falling prices, the consumption of X goods has been reduced. Why it is reducing? It is reducing because the negative income effect is here. The negative income effect is more than the positive substitution effect. Got it? So finally, what observe? The consumption of both of X will go down. So this is the case of given goods. So I hope you will understand the decomposition of price effect. That means we are bifurcating. We are distributing the impact of income effect and substitution effect in case of normal goods, inferior goods and given goods. So what is the distinction between inferior goods and given goods? The distinction is that in case of inferior goods, negative income effect, the amount of negative income effect will be lesser than the positive substitution effect. But in case of given good, negative income effect will be more than the positive substitution effect. So ultimately we will observe fall in the consumption of that good. Okay. So with this, let us stop here for today. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you.